Your friends are scrolling through short content, but you, my friend, you're here to learn. Welcome to the RAAAZ Clips. Do you guys dislike the British as much as we do?
That is mixed. I wouldn't say that. I mean, we're having this podcast in English, so one must be not hypocritical about it.
I don't think we dislike modern day Britishers.
Yes.
You know, the modern day Britishers are usually very nice. Usually. You will find again exceptions there as well, as is the case with the rest of the world. How do you guys look at British Raj? Do you all look at it the same way we do?
I think there is a sense of revisionism now, but that comes from, I think there is a similarity here. You see, the post-independence 2 or 3 generations were what the British created. In the sense, they thought in English, they lived in an English way, they went to public schools. Now in Sri Lanka, we have public schools modeled after Harrow and Eton, which where you study to be, I guess, a little English gentleman, so to speak, or ladies, because we have ladies' schools as well. So the 3 generations basically were anglicized. Today, the new younger generation coming up are prouder, like here, about our culture, our language. And language has a lot to do with this, because in Sri Lanka we have had many violent episodes, and one has been with the younger Sinhala youth who felt they had been pushed out of society by the English language and those traditions, because they felt that the old elite who the British created basically kept a bulk of our Sinhala youth out of the system. They went to, they would go to these public schools that were modeled on British public schools. They would then come out of that. They would either be educated abroad, after that in university, and come back, and they would then get the top jobs in the private sector. And there was a resentment on that. Interestingly, cricket doesn't have that resentment. Interestingly, but there was this resentment. So now there is this generation that is more educated in Sinhala, and they ask very often a question that is asked is, what language do you dream in?
What language do you dream in?
Yes. In other words, your dreams, are they in Sinhala or in English? Do people ask that here? Whether you dream in Hindi or interpret or in English?
I think we say, what's your thinking language?
What's your thinking language? So our equivalent is language you dream in. And increasingly now people are proud of, like here, the fact that, okay, we have our culture, we have our language. Now, that can cut again with our problems when you have between, let's say, the different races and ethnicities, because English is seen often as a link language between all, because Tamils are learning to speak English, Sinhalese could learn to speak English, then it would be easier to communicate.
You and me are here technically because of the British
Empire.
Exactly.
So this is complex, but a complex an issue that has to be addressed. Now, I say that everybody can't become a little Englishman. That's not what the world is about. We must be proud of the ability to communicate with the world, but we must be proud of our own culture and our own language as well.
Yes.
And I think that's what you are trying to do in India at the moment. It's you're finding it too, difficult line, and we are finding it a difficult line to draw as well.
Yeah, I think Indian youth are very motivated about making money. Honestly, now everyone's extremely entrepreneurial, money driven. And the smarter sections of Indian youth know that English is now a skill. So if you learn the skill of English, you'll be able to sell your products and services to the rest of the world as well. So India's in this very ambitious place right now. I would assume
that is a good point. For us, always teaching English has been the issue, because we don't have enough English teachers. So the privileged schools, again, the schools that are patronized by the elite in Sri Lanka, who are more anglicized, who are more comfortable with the West, those schools generally tend to have better English teachers, so your English is better, sure. And or at least the way you speak English, the accent and so on and so forth as well. So therefore, now I think with especially technology, virtual learning possibilities, we should be able to give more access to English, okay, and make people less sensitive about English. Because in our universities, which are Sinhala, our universities by and large are taught in Sinhala, the students refer to English as the sword. It's a language that cuts them out of society.
Really?
So that's what led to we had a very violent insurrection in the south of Sri Lanka, largely by Sinhala youth in the 1980s and in the 70s as well. That anger came from there. They said English is, basically cutting us out of society. So this access to English is very important, and I think technology can help us to bridge that gap.
Okay. So, I mean, there's so many tangential questions I have about this whole British Empire thing, because at least in India, I'll tell you what's happening now. A lot of Indian youth doesn't like their own history books from school, because we realize that we've been taught slightly demotivating history. And that's why this podcast is even working. I'm getting historians who dedicate the entire life to history and are saying, no, hold on, you need to know about this and you need to know about that. Is a similar thing happening in Sri Lanka where your history was erased to work on against your sense of morale? For example, like I also taught slightly demotivating history in your history textbooks, and is there like a bit of a revolution because that's what's happening in India? I would assume that because we're culturally similar, something similar has happened, because if you put yourself in the shoes of a British leader at the time, they would have had the same strategy for Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, that okay, all these brown people, let's take their rich culture and kind of cut the cord with the past and tell them that no, you guys are savages. So that's how they had ruled over the subcontinent. I would assume something similar has happened in Sri Lanka, unless I'm wrong.
No, definitely. It is not happening, in my view, in the organized way it is happening here, because among your intellectuals, within your community, among your political leaders, this conversation is happening. In our case, it is happening in a more, I think, impulsive, emotional way. And that is the danger. We need to have this conversation the way you are having it here and start that revision to be done now.
Okay.
Whether it's our books or the way, even about India, perceptions about what we discussed earlier, we need to start rethinking the way we look at ourselves as Sri Lankans. But the problem, I think, for us is that we have so many other issues going on with the economy, and we have just come out of a war. We have had other challenges as well. That this conversation is not happening enough. I think a lot of people know it's a problem. It's an elephant in the room. Politicians have taken this and are sort of using this in a very extreme way. And that is dangerous.
Okay.
So with this conversation, this is at the root of what is sometimes holding us back, is our inability, I think, is to bridge this. In other words, we created a elitist class. I mean, here also in India, you refer to this sort of privileged class that the British created. We have created that class. I mean, many of us may belong to that in different ways. But that class has to realize that they have governed for 75 years, and we have to take stock as a country as to where we have succeeded and where we have failed. And now you have to start looking at the future, and you are doing that now. We are having that conversation, but I don't think we are having it in a structured way, and we'll need to get to that soon.
So if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to TRS Clips for more.